October 17th, 2017. The air hung thick and heavy over Ebenezer Creek, Missouri, a forgotten hollow swallowed by the sprawling Ozark hills. A relentless, chilling mist clung to the gnarled branches of ancient oaks, carrying the damp scent of decay and distant wood smoke. Inside, a dilapidated, single-wide trailer tucked deep within a maze of winding dirt roads. The only light came from a single, bare bulb, flickering weakly against stained, peeling wallpaper. 17-year-old Lily Mae Hawkins lay curled on a mattress directly on the floor, her body racked with an agony that stole her breath. Her face, pale and streaked with sweat, was a mask of silent suffering, her knuckles white as she clutched at the threadbare blanket beneath her. The silence in the small space was oppressive, broken only by the creak of the trailer in the wind and Lily Mae's own ragged gasps. Then, a sound, fragile yet piercing, sliced through the suffocating quiet, a faint, wavering cry. It was unmistakable, the first breath of a newborn baby, raw and vulnerable, echoing off the thin walls of the trailer. Lily Mae's eyes, wide with a terror deeper than the pain she'd just endured, snapped open. Her own cries had been swallowed, but this new voice, innocent and pure, seemed to amplify the profound despair that had been her constant companion for years. In this isolated corner of the Ozarks, a place where secrets were often buried deeper than the roots of the ancient trees, this tiny, insistent wail wasn't just a sign of life. It was a desperate, primal scream, announcing an unspeakable truth that could no longer be contained. The air suddenly felt thinner, colder, charged with the weight of a revelation. Minutes later, the distant wail of sirens began to cut through the misty night, growing steadily louder, closer, their mournful cries slicing through the pervasive quiet of the holler. Emergency lights, a frantic dance of red and blue, flickered erratically through the gaps in the tattered curtains, casting grotesque shadows across the trailer's cramped interior. A cold, steady rain had begun to fall, drumming against the tin roof, a relentless rhythm accompanying the encroaching chaos. The baby's cries continued, small and insistent, now joined by the frantic shouts of approaching voices. The long-held silence of Ebenezer Creek was shattered, not by the thunder of a storm, but by the fragile voice of an infant, forcing a community to confront its darkest shadows. Who knew, and what untold secrets had been allowed to fester in this forgotten corner of America for so long? The cruiser, an older Ford Crown Victoria, skidded to a halt on the muddy track, its siren abruptly silenced, leaving only the relentless rain and the baby's fragile cries. Detective Mark Jensen, a weary veteran of the Ozark County Sheriff's Department, pushed open the door, the damp, cold air immediately seeping into his bones as he stepped into the oppressive mist. His younger partner, Deputy Sarah Miller, followed, her hand instinctively going to her sidearm, her gaze sweeping the dark, surrounding woods. The trailer's door, hanging ajar, offered a glimpse of the flickering, bare bulb within. Jensen had seen too much in these forgotten hollows. Moonshine stills, meth labs, violent domestic disputes. But the primal wail of an infant on a night like this, so raw and desperate, felt fundamentally different. He exchanged a grim, unspoken look with Miller. This wasn't going to be straightforward. The profound isolation of Ebenezer Creek, a place where secrets often thrived in the shadows, always complicated things, burying truths deeper than any grave. Inside, the scene was stark and unsettling. Lily Mae Hawkins, barely more than a child herself, lay pale and trembling on a stained mattress, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and exhaustion. Beside her, wrapped in a threadbare blanket, a tiny baby whimpered. Jensen's gaze swept the cramped, squalid space. No other adults were present, and the stench of poverty and neglect was palpable. A familiar scent in these parts. Lily Mae. Jensen's voice was soft, practiced, aiming for reassurance. "Who else is here with you, honey?" Her response was a barely audible whisper, her eyes darting nervously to the corner of the room as if an unseen presence still lingered. The immediate challenge was clear: a minor, a newborn, no apparent guardian, and an environment that screamed for urgent intervention. This wasn't just a medical emergency. It was a jurisdictional nightmare unfolding in real time, far from readily available social services or proper support. As paramedics arrived, carefully assessing Lily Mae and the newborn, Jensen began his preliminary questioning. The girl's answers were evasive, her body language recoiling when he pressed about the baby's father. "He ain't here," was all she'd offer, her voice tight with a fear that seemed to transcend the immediate situation, hinting at something deeply ingrained. Deputy Miller, meanwhile, was canvassing the immediate, muddy perimeter, finding no fresh footprints other than their own, which only deepened the mystery. The air inside the trailer felt heavy, charged with an unspoken dread. Jensen, with years of experience reading between the lines in these parts, felt a cold knot settle in his gut. This wasn't just a teenage mother in distress. There was a deeper, more insidious narrative unfolding. A story of profound silence and systemic failure that the Ozarks sometimes harbored. The absence of any concerned family member, combined with Lily Mae's palpable terror, hinted at something far more sinister than simple abandonment. The immediate lack of family or a clear explanation for the baby's parentage, coupled with Lily Mae's almost catatonic state, immediately raised a multitude of red flags for Jensen. He knew firsthand the insular nature of these remote communities, where family matters were often kept strictly private, shielded from external scrutiny, almost as a point of pride. But the raw, pervasive fear in Lily Mae's eyes, a terror that seemed to be deeply ingrained in her very being, suggested a violation far beyond what a typical runaway or teenage pregnancy might entail. This wasn't just a case for Child Protective Services. It was rapidly escalating into a criminal investigation. He instructed Miller to secure the scene and begin a more thorough search for any adult presence, his mind already racing through the grim possibilities that often lay hidden beneath the surface of such isolated, forgotten places. Justice in Ebenezer Creek, he knew, often required unearthing long-buried secrets. The immediate chaos of Lily Mae's delivery began to give way to a grim, organized response. Detective Jensen, moving with the practiced efficiency of a man who'd seen too much, was already on the phone, the flickering light of his flashlight cutting through the trailer's gloom. He secured the scene, directing Deputy Miller to maintain a perimeter while initiating contact with Missouri State Highway Patrol's investigative unit. The sheer isolation of Ebenezer Creek, combined with the disturbing circumstances, meant this was no longer just a local matter. He knew specialized resources would be necessary, especially given the potential for a deeply rooted, long-standing crime hidden within the Ozark shadows. The quiet determination in his voice belied the turmoil he felt, understanding the gravity of the unfolding events. At the local county hospital, where Lily Mae and the baby had been transported, the initial interviews proved challenging. Lily Mae, still physically recovering and deeply traumatized, communicated mostly through monosyllabic answers and fearful glances. A social worker, brought in by Miller, gently attempted to establish rapport, but the 17-year-old remained withdrawn, her eyes constantly scanning the room as if expecting someone. She confirmed her father, Jedediah Hawkins, was the only other resident of the trailer, but offered no further details about his whereabouts or the baby's parentage. Her silence, a protective shield forged by years of unspoken suffering, spoke volumes, reinforcing Jensen's growing suspicion that a far more profound and sinister secret lay buried beneath her fear. The child, now stabilized, lay quietly in the nursery, a fragile testament to the brutal truth. Back at the trailer, the Missouri State Highway Patrol's crime scene unit, a team of meticulous forensic experts, had arrived. Their bright lights cut through the persistent mist, revealing the squalor of the single wide in sharp relief. Every surface was carefully documented, photographed, and sampled. Of paramount importance was the collection of DNA evidence, swabs from Lily Mae, blood samples from the newborn, and potential biological traces from within the trailer. These would be crucial in establishing paternity and confirming Jensen's horrifying hypothesis. Fingerprints were lifted from various surfaces, hoping to identify any other individuals who might have frequented the remote property. The methodical work underscored the gravity of the situation, transforming a domestic call into a full-blown criminal investigation. While forensics processed the scene, Jensen initiated comprehensive background checks. He ran Jedediah Hawkins' name through national databases like the NCIC, National Crime Information Center, and local sheriff's records, searching for any prior arrests, warrants, or reported incidents. Public records revealed Jedediah as the sole registered owner of the Ebenezer Creek trailer, a property that had seen minimal official interaction over the years, a common trait in these secluded areas. Lily Mae Hawkins, too, had a sparse digital footprint. No driver's license, limited school attendance records, and no previous interactions with law enforcement or social services that were readily apparent. Lack of recorded history, rather than offering reassurance, only deepened the investigators' unease, suggesting a life lived entirely off the grid, shielded from external view. The preliminary findings painted a stark picture of profound isolation. The property records confirmed Jedediah Hawkins' long-standing residence in that forgotten hollow, a place where generations had often lived and died with minimal outside interference. There was no record of Lily Mae's mother or any other immediate family members registered at the address, suggesting she had been raised in an environment devoid of a maternal presence, further amplifying her vulnerability. The absence of a concerned family network, coupled with the trailer's dilapidated state, and Jedediah's clean but eerily sparse record, began to solidify the grim narrative forming in Jensen's mind. This wasn't just a case of neglect. It was a deeply ingrained systemic failure, a hidden horror that had festered in the silence of Ebenezer Creek, now brought violently into the light by a baby's cry. Jensen's first priority was locating Jedediah Hawkins. He tried the number listed on Jedediah's sparse records, but it went straight to an automated message, a disconnected line. Deputy Miller, still at the trailer, confirmed no vehicle was present, nor any obvious signs of recent departure beyond the usual disarray. Jensen contacted local deputies familiar with the Ebenezer Creek area, asking them to check any known hangouts or relatives, however distant. The response was uniform. Jedediah kept to himself, rarely venturing far from his property, and had no close family locally. It quickly became clear Jedediah Hawkins hadn't simply stepped out for a moment. He had vanished, seemingly without a trace, leaving behind a terrified daughter and a newborn baby. The Ozark Hills, Jensen knew, were vast and unforgiving, perfect for disappearing. The immediate disappearance of Jedediah presented a critical hurdle. Without direct, irrefutable evidence linking him to a specific crime beyond suspicion, the legal team was cautious. A judge wouldn't issue an immediate, all-points bulletin for a man who hadn't been officially charged, especially when his absence could be explained away as simply, quote, leaving home. The DNA results, crucial for confirming paternity and thereby strengthening the case for abuse, were still days away. Jensen felt the familiar frustration of working within the system's constraints in a region where people often distrusted outsiders and rarely volunteered information. The silence of Ebenezer Creek wasn't just physical, it was a deeply ingrained cultural barrier, protecting its own, even its darkest secrets. This initial setback intensified the pressure on Jensen. Every hour Jedediah remained at large increased the risk of him fleeing the state or burying himself deeper in the region's vast, unmonitored wilderness. The image of Lily Mae's haunted eyes and the fragile baby's innocent face fueled his resolve. He knew this wasn't just about finding a missing person. It was about unearthing a crime that had festered in plain sight, protected by isolation and silence. Miller was instructed to expand the perimeter search, while Jensen began to compile a detailed profile of Jedediah, hoping to find a pattern, a weakness, anything that could lead them to the man who had brought such unspeakable suffering to his own daughter. The hunt for Jedediah Hawkins had just begun, and it promised to be a long, arduous one. The State Highway Patrol's forensic team, operating with methodical precision, meticulously processed the dilapidated trailer in Ebenezer Creek. Their initial findings, though not immediately conclusive, began to paint a grim picture. They discovered evidence suggesting a long-term, isolated existence. Multiple layers of worn-out clothing, an absence of child-specific items beyond the newborn's makeshift swaddle, and a distinct lack of personal effects indicating a female presence other than Lily May herself. Dust patterns and settled grime suggested certain areas had been undisturbed for years, hinting at fixed routines. Moreover, a careful examination of the mattress revealed specific staining patterns and fiber evidence that were immediately flagged for priority analysis, hinting at repeated, traumatic events. This wasn't just squalor. It was a deeply ingrained, almost ritualistic isolation, meticulously preserved. Days later, the first wave of technical data began trickling in, solidifying Jensen's growing dread. Preliminary DNA analysis from the scene, focusing on non-Lily May biological samples, indicated the presence of a single, consistent male profile. While not yet definitively identified, the genetic markers strongly suggested a familial relation within a tight-knit population, aligning disturbingly with the insular nature of Ebenezer Creek. Concurrently, digital forensics on an old, prepaid flip phone, found tucked away in a drawer, the only electronic device discovered, yielded sparse but critical call logs. These logs showed infrequent outgoing calls, almost exclusively to a single, unregistered number, and no incoming calls for months. The pattern of communication reinforced the profound isolation, suggesting a deliberate attempt to remain untraceable, a ghost in the digital realm. The extensive background checks, initially yielding little, finally provided a faint but promising lead. A deep dive into Jedediah Hawkins' property tax records, spanning decades, revealed an obscure, delinquent tax lien from nearly 20 years prior, linked to a small, forgotten parcel of land adjacent to a defunct hunting lodge about 15 miles deeper into the Ozarks. This lodge, once a seasonal destination, had been abandoned for years. Jensen remembered an old, unconfirmed tip from a decade ago, mentioning Jedediah occasionally doing odd jobs there. It was a long shot, a thread barely visible, but in the absence of any other solid information, it became the team's new focus. This forgotten location, a relic of a different time, might just hold the key to Jedediah's current whereabouts, or at least offer a glimpse into his secretive life. The convergence of these disparate clues began to form an undeniable, horrifying narrative. The male DNA profile from the trailer, the isolated communication patterns, and the discovery of Jedediah's forgotten connection to the remote hunting lodge all pointed towards a carefully constructed life of secrecy and control. Lily May's persistent fear and her inability to articulate the baby's parentage now resonated with chilling clarity. Jensen realized the systemic failure wasn't just about poverty or lack of services. It was about an active, deliberate concealment facilitated by the Ozarks, vastness, and a deeply ingrained distrust of outsiders. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, each one reinforcing the grim suspicion that the abuse wasn't a sudden act, but a sustained, generational horror meticulously hidden. Then, the call came that solidified everything. The Missouri State Highway Patrol's lab delivered the definitive DNA report. The male profile extracted from the trailer and the baby's blood samples were a match. A perfect, irrefutable match. Jedediah Hawkins was, beyond any doubt, the biological father of Lily May's newborn. The unspeakable truth, whispered in the raw cries of an infant, was now screaming from the scientific data. Jensen felt a cold, hard knot of anger and resolve tighten in his gut. This wasn't just a missing person case anymore. It was a confirmed case of aggravated incest and child sexual abuse, a crime that had festered in the shadows of Ebenezer Creek for far too long. The hunt for Jedediah Hawkins was no longer just about finding a man. It was about delivering justice. After the definitive DNA confirmation, the search for Jedediah intensified, transforming into a desperate manhunt. While the immediate focus remained on his capture, Deputy Miller, meticulously reviewing every scrap of paper related to the Hawkins family, stumbled upon a faded, handwritten note. Tucked into a rarely accessed physical file, it was an old, local school district log from when Lily May was barely 10. The note, scribbled by a former elementary school counselor, Ms. Eleanor Vance, detailed a vague concern regarding home environment and withdrawn behavior, and an unverified report of Jedediah's overprotective tendencies. Deemed insufficient for formal action at the time, the report was dismissed as the musings of an overly cautious teacher in an isolated area, a tragically overlooked signal of deeper troubles. This revelation sent a jolt through Jensen. It wasn't just about a missing abuser. It was about a profound missed opportunity, a system's blind spot that allowed a nascent concern to wither. This wasn't a traditional betrayal, but a chilling bureaucratic oversight, a critical piece of the puzzle buried under layers of paperwork and the Ozark's quiet indifference. The faded note, though vague, now held immense significance, casting a dark shadow on the community's collective responsibility. It suggested that whispers of Jedediah's disturbing behavior weren't entirely unheard, just unheeded by those positioned to intervene. Jensen immediately tasked Miller with tracking down Ms. Eleanor Vance, hoping to uncover more details about the context of that original concern and why it never escalated. This new lead fundamentally altered the investigation's trajectory. What began as an urgent hunt for a perpetrator now expanded to include an inquiry into systemic negligence, a deep dive into the cracks of a system that had failed Lily May. Jensen understood that finding Jedediah was paramount, but understanding how he operated undetected for so long and who might have inadvertently enabled him through inaction became equally critical. The focus broadened from the immediate crime scene to the broader social fabric of Ebenezer Creek, meticulously examining the institutions meant to safeguard children in rural America. The search for Jedediah continued with renewed urgency, now layered with the heavy weight of a past that demanded accountability, a silence that had not just protected a monster, but implicated those who failed to listen. The definitive DNA results ripped through the fragile quiet of Ozark County like a wildfire, immediately igniting a national media frenzy. News vans, satellite dishes bristling, descended upon the sleepy town of Ebenezer Creek, transforming its winding dirt roads into a chaotic spectacle. Major cable news networks, from CNN to Fox News, ran continuous coverage, their headlines screaming about the Ozark horror and Lily May's unspeakable truth. The once forgotten Hollow became the epicenter of a chilling national conversation, dissecting the systemic failures that allowed such a crime to fester. Detective Jensen, along with Sheriff Thompson, found themselves thrust into an unwelcome spotlight, facing relentless questions from aggressive reporters, the pressure to apprehend Jedediah Hawkins escalating with every live broadcast. The world was watching, demanding answers and swift justice, turning a local tragedy into a stark, uncomfortable mirror, reflecting societal blind spots in rural America. The community's reaction was a stark illustration of its fractured soul. While many residents expressed profound shock and outrage, organizing small, solemn vigils for Lily May and demanding Jedediah's immediate capture, a more insidious undercurrent of distrust and insular defensiveness also emerged. Whispers in local diners suggested some still clung to the notion that family business should remain private, or even questioned the media's portrayal, distrusting the city folk who had suddenly invaded their quiet lives. This tension occasionally spilled into confrontations, with residents verbally clashing over the case's implications. Handmade signs demanding justice for Lily May stood in stark contrast to the lingering suspicion in some eyes, proving that even in the face of undeniable truth, the deeply ingrained cultural barriers of the Ozarks remained formidable, challenging the very notion of collective accountability. Under immense public pressure, the manhunt for Jedediah Hawkins escalated dramatically. Missouri State Highway Patrol, bolstered by federal marshals and K-9 units, launched an unprecedented search operation across the rugged Ozark terrain. A tip, originating from an old hunter who recalled Jedediah's infrequent visits to the abandoned lodge, led a specialized tactical team deep into the wilderness. The air was thick with anticipation as drones scanned the dense canopy and ground teams meticulously swept through the overgrown trails. Just as they closed in on the dilapidated lodge, a fleeting glimpse of a figure, a shadow darting through the trees, confirmed Jedediah's presence. A high-stakes chase ensued, but Jedediah, intimately familiar with every rock and ravine, vanished into the labyrinthine hills, leaving only a discarded, muddy boot. A chilling reminder of his elusive nature. The relentless media spotlight and the intensifying search, while necessary, cast a long shadow over the already fragile investigation and Lily May's recovery. Jensen and Miller found themselves constantly navigating the demands of public relations alongside the intricate details of the case, each interview a delicate balance between transparency and protecting sensitive information. Lily May, still in the hospital and under protective custody, became an unwilling symbol, her face plastered across national news, further compounding her trauma. The constant scrutiny risked tainting potential witness testimonies and complicating future legal proceedings. Yet, the public outcry also galvanized resources, pushing the boundaries of what local law enforcement could typically achieve. It was a brutal paradox. The very force demanding justice also threatened to overwhelm the delicate process of achieving it. The pursuit for Jedediah Hawkins reached its fever pitch just before dawn. A specialized tactical unit guided by K-9 teams and drone surveillance converged on the dilapidated hunting lodge, its silhouette stark against the pre-dawn mist. The air was thick, with the scent of pine and damp earth, punctuated only by the crackle of radios and the heavy breathing of the officers. They swept through the lodge's crumbling interior, finding remnants of a meager, solitary existence. Discarded cans, a worn sleeping bag. The K-9 unit, a German shepherd named Ranger, suddenly alerted to a hidden cellar beneath a loose floorboard. Below, huddled in the darkness, was Jedediah Hawkins, his face gaunt and defiant, his eyes reflecting a desperate, cornered animal. He offered no resistance, only a chilling, hollow stare as handcuffs clicked shut. The Ozarks had finally yielded its secret. The immediate aftermath of Jedediah's capture was a tense mix of relief and grim satisfaction. As he was led out into the harsh glare of the tactical lights, his unkempt appearance spoke volumes about his time in hiding, yet his demeanor remained unnervingly stoic. He uttered no words, no confession, only a silent defiance that sent shivers through the seasoned officers. Back at the lodge, forensic teams meticulously processed the scene, uncovering further evidence of his prolonged, solitary habitation, including a cache of rudimentary supplies and a crude, handwritten journal filled with cryptic, disturbing entries that hinted at a deeply twisted worldview. News of his apprehension reached Lily May at the hospital, delivering a complex mix of fear and a nascent sense of relief, the first tremor of a future free from his shadow.
Jedediah Hawkins' arraignment was a somber spectacle, broadcast live from the Ozark County Courthouse. The courtroom, packed with media and a stunned community, bristled with raw emotion as the charges were formally read: aggravated incest, child sexual abuse, and endangerment of a minor. His plea of not guilty was met with gasps of outrage, but the irrefutable DNA evidence stood as an unyielding wall against his denial. Outside, the media circus continued, now fueled by the perpetrator's face and the promise of a trial. For Lily May, the legal battle ahead was daunting, but Jedediah's capture marked a crucial turning point. It was the first concrete step toward accountability, a public declaration that the silence of Ebenezer Creek, once a shield for unspeakable crimes, had been irrevocably shattered, forcing a reckoning. The trial of Jedediah Hawkins was a landmark event in Ozark County, drawing national attention and laying bare the systemic vulnerabilities of isolated communities. The overwhelming DNA evidence, coupled with Lily May's harrowing testimony, delivered with the quiet strength of a survivor, left no room for doubt. Jedediah was found guilty on all counts: aggravated incest, child sexual abuse, and endangerment. The judge, in a stern address, condemned his actions as a profound betrayal of trust and a violation of the most fundamental human bonds, handing down a life sentence without parole. Justice, long overdue, had finally descended upon Ebenezer Creek, not with a whisper, but with the full, undeniable force of the law. A clear message:
that even the deepest shadows could not forever conceal such depravity. In the aftermath, Lily Mae Hawkins began the arduous journey toward healing, supported by dedicated social workers and therapists, slowly rebuilding a life free from the suffocating grip of her past. Her baby, healthy and thriving, was placed in a loving adoptive home, ensuring a future unburdened by the trauma of its origins. The case forced Ebenezer Creek, and indeed many similar rural communities across America, to confront uncomfortable truths about privacy, oversight, and the critical need for vigilance. Conversations about reporting suspected abuse, previously taboo, cautiously began to emerge in local churches and community centers, signaling a subtle but significant shift in a culture long defined by its insularity. The silence, once a shield, was slowly giving way to a nascent, fragile dialogue. Lily Mae's courage in breaking that silence, a whisper that became a roar, serves as a powerful testament to resilience and the enduring human spirit. Her story, born from the deepest despair, ultimately illuminated a path toward accountability and hope, reminding us that even in the most forgotten corners, light can penetrate the darkness. If this powerful story resonated with you, if it sparked a conversation or reinforced your belief in the power of speaking up, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel for more in-depth explorations of justice, and join us for our next compelling case. It's just as vital as this one.